Sandy Hook School. I think there's somebody shooting in here. Sandy Hook School. I saw a glimpse of somebody. They're running down the hallway.
Okay.
They're still running. They're still shooting. Sandy Hook School, please.
When I first got there, it was like a regular day.
We heard a loud bang. We thought that something fell. Then we heard another. And then we thought that that was a gunshot.
The majority of those who died today were children. Beautiful little kids between the ages of 5 and 10 years old. They had their entire lives ahead of them. Birthdays, graduations, weddings, kids of their own.
2012년 12월 14일 20살의 아담 란자는 집에서 자신의 엄마를 살해한 뒤 그녀가 구입했던 엽총, 2정의 권총, AR-15 스타일 반자동 소총과 수백 발의 총알이 장전된 대용량 탄창을 챙겨 샌디훅 초등학교로 들어갔습니다. 유치원생부터 4학년 아이들이 다니는 공립초등학교인 샌디훅 초등학교에서 아담 란자는 20명의 아이들과 6명의 교사를 살해하고 스스로 목숨을 끊었습니다. 대통령 당선 이전부터 총기 규제를 적극 옹호했던 오바마 대통령은 샌디훅 사건 이후 클린턴 정부에서 추진했던 총기 규제에 대한 과업을 이어가기로 합니다.
It was in a context of sorrow, extreme, anger and frustration about why can't we do something about this? It was like enough is enough is enough. Put together something for me, Joe.
When Newtown occurred, it was like Columbine all over again, and we immediately knew there would be a big push among politicians to seize the opportunity, because they're kind of like vultures on the gun issue. They have to wait until there's a pile of dead bodies, and then they come swooping in with their catcalls and everything else. It's very disgusting.
How do we protect our children right now, starting today, in a way that we know works? Think about it. We care about our money, so we protect our banks with armed guards, American airports, office buildings, power plants, courthouses, even sports stadiums, our children. We as a society leave them every day utterly defenseless. And the monsters and the predators of the world know it and exploit it. That must change now.
NRA, stop killing our children. It's the NRA and the assault weapons that are killing our children.
The truth is that our society is populated by an unknown number of genuine monsters. People that are so deranged, so evil, so possessed by voices and driven by demons that no sane person can ever possibly comprehend them. They walk among us every single day. The media demonize gun owners. The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
총기 소유의 권리에 대한 공격이 들어올 때마다 NRA의 힘은 더욱 막강해졌고 그들을 지지하는 사람들의 기부금도 더욱 늘어났습니다.
And we've got to send the signal that this is not the time to compromise, that Obama is the enemy, and they want to take your guns away. Yes, it's too bad about the kids, but we are not going to back down.
백악관에서는 NRA 회원들을 설득할 수 있는 동맹이 필요했습니다.
As your senator, I'll protect our Second Amendment rights. That's why the NRA endorsed me. I'll take on Washington.
It really got to me. These are babies, 5- and 6-year-old children. Who would have ever... It's just beyond my imagination, most Americans, to conceive that anything this horrific could happen in America.
NRA의 적극적 지지를 받고 있던 민주당 상원의원 조 맨치는 백악관의 강력한 총기 규제 의지에 힘을 실어주며 NRA를 설득시키려 노력합니다.
I was optimistic. Over 91% of the American people supported expanding background checks. 80% of the households that had an NRA member supported it.
Everybody should have to go through a background check if you're in a gun show.
샌디훅 초등학교 총기 난사 사건은 NRA 내부의 인사들조차 무언가 조치를 취해야 한다는 필요성을 느끼게 만들었고, NRA 인사들은 조 맨친을 만나 법안에 대한 의견을 주고받습니다. 이들이 만남을 가졌다는 소문은 순식간에 퍼져나갔고, NRA 내에서 30만여 명의 회원을 거느리고 있는 구구 총기 소유 권리 활동가 레리 프렛을 중심으로 한 구구 회원들은 NRA가 연방정부와 타협을 하려 한다며 NRA 회원들을 소집했습니다.
We put out an alert saying, please, if you belong to the NRA, call this guy at this number and ask him to urge the powers that be to oppose the bill. Gun control simply kills people, and for Senator Manchin to wave the bloody shirts of those children from Newtown is despicable.
NRA 구구 회원들의 의견을 전달받은 NRA의 대표 웨인 라피에르는 법안 통과를 저지하기 위한 캠페인을 시작합니다.
That was Joe Manchin's commitment, but now Manchin is working with President Obama and New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg. Concerned? You should be.
Senator Manchin was vilified by the NRA. It was almost like a personal vendetta. So they shoot up one of their own.
NRA의 강력한 공격은 공화당 의원들과 민주당 보수 의원들을 겁주기에 충분했습니다.
The amendment is not agreed to. How could they vote that way? Don't they understand what happened? How can they do that? How can this be? I mean, it was disbelief and a sense of betrayal.
오바마 대통령은 샌디 훅 초등학교 총기 난사 사건의 피해자 가족들을 백악관에 초청했습니다.
A few months ago, in response to too many tragedies, including the shootings of a United States Congresswoman, Gabby Gifford, who's here today, and the murder of 20 innocent school children and their teachers, this country took up the cause of protecting more of our people from gun violence. Not just to honor the memory of their children, but to protect the lives of all of our children. All it did was extend the same background check rules that already apply to guns purchased from a dealer to guns purchased at gun shows or over the internet. So 60% of guns are already purchased through a background check system. This would have covered a lot of the guns that are currently outside that system. So while this compromise didn't contain everything I wanted or everything that these families wanted, it did represent progress. It represented moderation and common sense. That's why 90% of the American people supported it. But instead of supporting this compromise, the gun lobby and its allies willfully lied about the bill. And unfortunately, this pattern of spreading untruths about this legislation served a purpose. But the fact is, most of these senators could not offer any good reason why we wouldn't want to make it harder for criminals and those with severe mental illnesses to buy a gun. There were no coherent arguments as to why we wouldn't do this. It came down to politics. The worry that that vocal minority of gun owners would come after them in future elections. They worried that the gun lobby would spend a lot of money and paint them as anti-Second Amendment. And so they caved to the pressure. I've heard some say that blocking this step would be a victory. And my question is, a victory for who? A victory for what? All that happened today was the preservation of the loophole that lets dangerous criminals buy guns without a background check. It didn't make our kids safer. Victory for not doing something that 90% of Americans, 80% of Republicans, the vast majority of your constituents wanted to get done? It begs the question, who are we here to represent? I've heard folks say that having the families of victims lobby for this legislation was somehow misplaced. A prop, somebody called them. Are they serious? Do we really think that thousands of families whose lives have been shattered by gun violence don't have a right to weigh in on this issue? Do we think their emotions, their loss, is not relevant to this debate? So all in all, this was a pretty shameful day for Washington.
오바마 대통령의 총기 규제 법안 노력은 실패로 돌아갔습니다.
Senator Chris Murphy at the center of a marathon filibuster on the floor of the U.S. Senate tonight, trying to force a change in federal gun law.
The senator from Connecticut has no idea what he's doing. because it's not going to stop anything. It won't stop anything. These people are hell-bent on hurting people.
And there's just no evidence that these gun laws would prevent these shootings.
There is at least an absence of certain proof as to the efficacy of gun ownership laws in the past.
To think that somehow gun control is, or increased gun control is the answer, in my view, that would have to be proved.
Well, that's our Second Amendment right, to have guns, and he has no right to do that.
I think he should have asked the people, and let the states vote on it, because I believe in having guns, bearing arms.
It wasn't the first time I had to talk to the nation in response to a mass shooting, nor would it be the last. Binghamton, Fort Hood, Aurora, Oak Creek, Newtown, the Navy Yard, Santa Barbara, Charleston, San Bernardino. Too many. The United States of America is not the only country on earth with violent or dangerous people. We are not inherently more prone to violence. But we are the only advanced country on earth that sees this kind of mass violence erupt with this kind of frequency. And as I've said before, somehow we become numb to it and we start thinking that this is normal. Even after San Bernardino, they've refused to make it harder for terrorist suspects who can't get on a plane to buy semi-automatic weapons. Weapons that kill tens of thousands of Americans every year. Congress actually voted to make it harder for public health experts to conduct research into gun violence. Made it harder to collect data and facts and develop strategies to reduce gun violence. Our unalienable right to life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness, those rights were stripped from college kids in Blacksburg and Santa Barbara, and from high schoolers at Columbine, and from first graders in Newtown. First graders. Every time I think about those kids, it gets me mad. And by the way, it happens on the streets of Chicago every day. All of us need to demand a Congress brave enough to stand up to the gun lobby's lies. All of us need to stand up and protect its citizens. All of us need to demand governors and legislators and businesses do their part to make our communities safer. And yes, it will be hard. And it won't happen overnight. It won't happen during my presidency. But a lot of things don't happen overnight. So just because it's hard, that's no excuse not to try.